Good for Mr. Small. No one now can question that our nation, it's turned its back on Judeo-Christian heritage, and in many ways, the truth of God's Word is being rejected and ignored. The mission of today's Praying for the Heart of America is to get our people to humble themselves, pray, and seek His face. For more information on how you can be a part of this day of focused prayer, visit prayerattheheart.com. I want to bring Rick Green back into the discussion. Rick, I want to go back to that story about Attorney General Merrick Garland talking about cracking down on the gun trafficking corridors, but nothing was said about the corridors on the border. Your thoughts?
Yeah, the focus is just so wrong. In fact, Tim, what you just said really is the focus. We have turned so far from God's word, and for so many years sowed seeds in our country that are destructive. And so, as optimistic as we are about bringing the right principles back, we do have to recognize there are negative results. There's consequences for our actions. God's laws, the laws of nature and nature's God, don't change. And so, a lot of the things that we're seeing this administration sow distracted by the wrong things and not focusing on the right things, I think that's a result of the spiritual rot in the country. But the good news are the other stories that you talked about as well. The fact that so many people are humbling themselves and praying and seeking God's face and turning from our wicked ways. And there really is a revival happening in the country. I mean, who would have thought? Good news on the pro-life front from the Ninth Circuit, that story that you just read a few minutes ago. I mean, these are really good things that are happening. So as much bad as there is, let's not forget there's good. When we return to God's principles, we can see some really good things.
Yeah, there's a leadership void, obviously, in Washington, but there's not in the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis just keep hitting it out of the ballpark, doesn't he?
Oh man, when I saw that story, I love it. I absolutely love it. And there's no doubt in his mind, right? I mean, he knows the child abuse that happens from forcing these kids to wear masks. So, I mean, immediately he's saying, absolutely not. We're not going to do this in Florida. I hope the governor of Texas will say the same thing, and some other governors. You know, the real problem is a lot of these folks did that last year, and so they don't want to do the opposite and look like, really reveal their bad decisions in the past, like Governor Abbott. But, we'll see. I can't imagine Texas going back to those draconian measures. I hope not. I think the people of Texas realize now what we're up against. But yeah, what good leadership out of Florida. Way to go, Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, if Governor Abbott wants to be reelected, he won't do that. Let's go to this story. Becky DeVos, which I loved her as the Secretary of Education, this Abolitionist Teaching Network's handbook. This is how we got so far off track. We, some time ago, started teaching crazy stuff to our children, and it got in the curriculums and everything else. Abolitionists were the good guys, weren't they, Rick?
That's right. And Greg, you nailed it. I mean, we kind of stepped away from education for so long. And frankly, look, I homeschooled my kids. And when I was growing up, I went to private school and homeschool because my parents saw what was happening in the public school system. And that's great, but we have to still influence what's happening in the public schools. And that's why it's important for people to run for the school board, show up at the school board meetings, really look into the curriculum that they're teaching. Everything we're seeing in America right now from the bad side of things, all of this Marxism spilling over in the streets, it's a result of what was sown into the education system for decades. So we have to pay attention to these things. We need more leaders like Betsy DeVos. We need more presidents like Donald Trump that will focus on those things. Governors that will say, hey, in our state, we're not going to teach the nonsense. We're going to go back and have our own 1776 commission. We're going to teach the good stuff, teach the history, the true history of America. That's vital right now. So I'm excited to see the enthusiasm that I see from parents speaking at school board meetings. I'm excited about all the people that have stood up and said, hey, I'll run for the school board. I'll go serve in that area. So it's good stuff happening, but that's an area we've really got to focus on the next few years if we want to turn this.
The left has their focus on the wrong thing. Merrick Garland didn't mention at all socialist district attorneys or defund the police. That effect it had. It was the gun. Right. All right, we'll be back with you in just a moment, Rick. Mike, over to you.